If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would miss you. My father said so. I finally walked away forever. 30 days later, the bills went unpaid, the house fell apart. And suddenly the family who laughed couldn't stop calling me back. My name's Erin. I'm 29, and I'm the one everyone in my family used to call the reliable one. You know the type, the guy who always shows up, picks up the slack, covers the bill when someone forgets their wallet, and fixes the messes no one else wants to touch. For a long time, I wore that label like a badge of honor. I thought being dependable was a good thing, but somewhere along the way, that reliability turned into expectation, then obligation, then something uglier. It became a leash. It all came to a head on my birthday last year, my 29th. Nothing big, just a casual family dinner at my parents' house. Mom made her usual lasagna. My sister brought her 2 kids and pretended they didn't exist while they ran wild. And my brother Nate rolled in late with the usual air of smugness and a bottle of wine he probably took from a client. Classic Nate move. He's 4 years younger than me and somehow still treated like the golden child, despite holding a revolving door of jobs and a bank account that never had more than 3 digits. Meanwhile, I had a stable job in it, owned my condo, paid off my car, and here's the kicker, was covering most of my parents' bills quietly for the past 3 years. They never asked directly. It started with a just for this month sweetheart moment after Dad's business hit a rough patch. Then came the mortgage, then the utilities. Then suddenly, I was the one paying for repairs, groceries, and even covering for Nate when he messed up again. And I did it quietly because I thought I was helping, because I thought, well, someone has to step up. That night, though, something cracked. The dinner started fine, if a bit tense like always. My mom fussed over Nate's tie. He hadn't even worn one, while Dad made one of his usual jabs about how I was still single because I worked too much. I laughed it off like I always do. Then came the cake. It was store-bought, but whatever. They sang happy birthday half-heartedly, mostly out of tune, but I smiled anyway. Then Dad raised his glass and said to Erin, "May he never disappear, or we'd have no one left to fix our messes." The table chuckled. Then he added it, the line that still echoes in my head. "If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would miss you." The words hit me like a slap, but it was the reaction that gutted me. Nate laughed. Mom didn't say a word, just smiled and nodded like it was some sort of joke she'd heard before. My niece asked what disappeared meant, and no one even blinked. I stared at them. My own family. These people I had spent the last several years supporting emotionally, financially, and mentally, and they were laughing like I was a joke, like I didn't matter. I excused myself quietly and left the house before anyone noticed I hadn't cut the cake. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream or throw things. I just sat in my car for 2 hours in silence. That silence told me more than their words ever could. For the next 2 weeks, I went about my life like nothing had happened. I still paid the electric bill, still covered Mom's credit card, still Venmo'd Nate when he texted me some nonsense about being short on rent. But I also started planning quietly, carefully, because I realized something. They didn't just take me for granted. They depended on me. They needed me. But I didn't need them. I didn't show up for Sunday dinner the next week. Mom texted me a passive-aggressive "missed you," and I ignored it. Nate sent a laughing emoji. Classy. I didn't respond. The week after that, I forgot to send the money for the water bill on purpose. They called confused. I said I was tight on cash this month. That was the first ripple. The next time Dad called, I let it go to voicemail. When I listened to it later, it was 30 seconds of silence. Then a sigh, then a sharp, "Call me when you can, Erin." No apology, just a command. 2 weeks later, I changed my phone number. Then I resigned from my job. You see, over the years, I had saved up quite a bit. I'd always lived modestly. No vacations, no big spending, just a quiet life and a steadily growing bank account. I had a little over $180,000 tucked away. I sold my condo, liquidated some investments. By the end of the month, I had just shy of $4 million and no obligations tying me down. I found a place out west, a small town I'd visited once on a solo hiking trip. Peaceful, quiet, isolated. I packed up, signed a lease under a new name, and vanished. No goodbye, no note, just gone. I cut off every digital footprint they could trace. I deleted my socials, closed, my old email canceled, every account tied to the bills, and I watched, not out of malice. Okay, maybe a little, but mostly out of curiosity. I wanted to see how long it would take before they noticed the world they leaned on had been built on my shoulders. The first sign came about 3 weeks later when Mom called my old job and found out I had resigned. Then came a string of desperate emails to my old address, subject lines like, "Please call urgent and we're worried." I didn't read most of them. Then came Nate. He actually found one of my old college friends and messaged him to ask if I was okay. Told him I'd gone silent and that the family was concerned. My friend knew better. He told him I was fine, just busy. The desperation ramped up fast. The mortgage didn't get paid. The utilities were cut. Dad's pride wouldn't let him admit anything to the extended family. So they just told everyone I was traveling for work. In reality, they were drowning. Nate had no money to cover their losses. Mom's credit card started bouncing. Dad had a minor health scare, and they couldn't afford the medical bills. For the first time, they had to ask for help from the very relatives they'd spent years quietly judging. And I spent my mornings sipping coffee on a porch that overlooked mountains. I went on long walks. I read books. I breathed for the first time in a decade. But that peace wouldn't last forever, because about a month later something happened. Something that pulled me right back into their orbit, whether I wanted it or not. It started with a knock on my new door. And standing there was someone I never expected to see. It was my cousin Jenna. Now, before I explain how she found me, let me back up. Jenna was the only person in our extended family I had ever really clicked with. We weren't close, but she always treated me like I was more than a wallet. She had this way of asking, "How are you?" that made you believe she actually wanted to know. But we hadn't talked much in years. She moved to Oregon for grad school, got married, had a kid, lived her life. So when she showed up on my doorstep in the middle of nowhere, I didn't know whether to be alarmed or weirdly touched. She looked exhausted. Not physically, more like the kind of emotional tired that clings to your bones. "Erin," she said, stepping back like she wasn't even sure I'd let her in. "I'm sorry to show up like this. I didn't know where else to go." I blinked. "Jenna, how did you—" "I didn't," she admitted. "Not really, but I remembered you talking about this town years ago when you visited. I made a guess, called every rental property in the area for 2 weeks until someone mentioned a quiet guy who paid a year's rent up front in cash." I almost laughed. Almost. But her expression stopped me. This wasn't just a casual visit. "What's going on?" I asked, stepping aside so she could come in. She walked in slowly, looking around like the place was too peaceful for what she was about to say. We sat. I offered tea. She didn't touch it. "They're losing everything," she said finally. "Your parents. Nate, the house is in foreclosure. Utilities were shut off last week. Your dad had some kind of panic attack. Refused to go to the hospital because they couldn't afford it. Nate tried to pawn your old gaming PC. They're a mess." I didn't say anything. "They told everyone you had a breakdown," she added. "That you just snapped, disappeared, that they're worried sick." I almost laughed again, but it came out dry and bitter. Of course they are. No one left to pay for their mistakes. Jenna didn't argue. She didn't defend them. That's why I let her stay. She just nodded slowly and said, "I figured that's what happened." I sat with that silence for a long moment before I finally asked, "Why are you really here, Jenna?" She looked up at me, and for the first time I saw something behind the calm, a flicker of uncertainty. "Because they're scared, and because part of me hoped you'd want to know." I didn't respond. She leaned forward slightly as if trying to meet me halfway. "Erin, I'm not asking you to fix it. God knows they don't deserve that, but I thought you should hear it from someone who isn't expecting anything." And that's when she handed me the envelope. It was addressed to me in my mom's handwriting. The same handwriting that used to label my school lunch bags and birthday cards when I was a kid. The sight of it made my stomach twist. I didn't open it. Jenna stayed the night in the guest room. She didn't push me to read it, and I didn't offer to talk. In the morning, she left quietly, thanking me for the bed and for not slamming the door in her face. After she left, I sat with that envelope for hours. I turned it over in my hands, stared at the seal, thought about every memory that had led to this point. The birthdays I paid for, the dinners I cooked, the nights I stayed up helping Nate with emergencies, the moment at that table when they all laughed as my dad casually erased me. I opened it. The letter was 2 pages, handwritten, shaky, emotional in the way someone writes when they're scared of consequences, not when they feel genuine regret. "Erin, we don't know what happened. One moment you were there and the next you were gone. No messages, no goodbye. We're scared. Are you okay? Your father's been sick. Nate is lost without you. We didn't realize how much you were holding together until it all started falling apart. Please just tell us where you are. We're sorry if we said something that hurt you. We were just joking that night. You know how your dad is. He never means it. He misses you. We all do. Please come home. Just talk to us. Love, Mom." There it was. Not a word of accountability, not a mention of what was actually said. Just a vague blanket apology wrapped in "we miss you" and we didn't mean it. No ownership, just fear. I didn't cry. I folded the letter back into the envelope and tucked it in a drawer. That night, I went to bed with a strange calm in my chest. I realized something important. They weren't mourning me. They were mourning the loss of their safety net. The next few weeks passed quietly. No new visitors, no new letters, but I kept tabs watched from a distance. Jenna gave me occasional updates. They moved in with my aunt temporarily. Nate tried to launch a GoFundMe claiming their breadwinner had vanished. It barely raised enough to cover a week of groceries. And then something happened that even I didn't see coming. One morning, Jenna called me. "You need to see this," she said. "Check your old email." I forwarded something. I logged into the email I hadn't touched in months, the one they probably assumed I'd abandoned. And there it was, an email from Nate. The subject line, "You owe us Aaron." I stared at that subject line for a long moment. "You owe us Aaron" time for words, each one digging under my skin like a splinter. I clicked the email open, unsure if I was angry, amused, or just numb at this point. "Hey man, I don't know what your deal is or where you ran off to, but this is getting ridiculous. We've been through tough times since you ghosted everyone. Mom and Dad are barely hanging on, and I'm doing everything I can to keep things together here. You were the one who kept everything running. You paid for everything. That was your role. We didn't ask you to be the responsible one. You just were. So don't get mad at us now for relying on you. That's on you. If you think disappearing proves some kind of point, fine. You've made it. Now come back and fix what you broke. It's the least you can do after everything we've done for you. We're family. That still means something, right, Nate?" I reread that last line. "We're family. That still means something, right?" Something about it made me laugh out loud. This dry, hollow kind of laugh that echoed through the walls of my quiet little cabin. They still didn't get it. They genuinely believed they were the victims here, that I'd somehow wronged them by no longer financing their lives. I didn't reply. Instead, I saved the email in a folder titled "Delusions," shut the laptop, and went for a walk. The trails behind the cabin were peaceful that time of day. Golden sunlight breaking through the trees, birdsong in the background, the faint crunch of leaves under my boots. I breathed in the quiet, the kind of quiet I'd never known growing up in a house filled with constant noise complaints, demands, shouting, and the never-ending echo of "Aaron, we'll handle it." As I walked, I kept turning over Nate's email in my mind. The tone, the entitlement, the way he twisted my disappearance into betrayal like I had some duty stamped on my forehead the day I was born. That was your role. It rang in my ears like a bell I couldn't unring. No, not anymore. But even as I tried to shake it off, I knew deep down that something was shifting. The game was changing. They were no longer just confused and scrambling. They were angry, and desperation mixed with entitlement. That's a dangerous cocktail. Over the next few days, the emails kept coming, not just from Nate. My mother sent a long one titled, "Please think about the family." It was full of vague guilt trips, references to my childhood. Lines like, "Remember how we always supported your science fairs, and this family's been through enough already." I didn't delete it. I archived it with the others. Then came the letter from my dad. Actual physical mail this time. Sent to the local post office under my old name. Probably hoping it would somehow reach me. I didn't even know how he figured out the town. Maybe Jenna had slipped up, or maybe he just guessed. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper typed. No greeting, no signature. "You're punishing us. I get it, but you're punishing your mother most of all. She doesn't deserve this." I didn't mean what I said that night. I thought it was funny. "You used to have a sense of humor. You're being dramatic. We need help. Either you're part of this family or you're not." That last line stuck with me. Either you're part of this family or you're not. It was a threat. Not veiled, not subtle, just a blunt instrument of emotional blackmail. The kind of statement someone makes when they think they still have power over you. But they didn't, because I wasn't that same version of Aaron anymore. Still, part of me kept waiting for the next move, and it came sooner than expected. I was out for groceries when I noticed someone following me. It wasn't anything obvious at first, just a man lingering a little too long in each aisle I visited. I'd never seen him before. A wiry guy in his late 30s, buzz-cut bland clothing, the kind of forgettable face you'd walk past a dozen times and never clock. But the third time I turned down a row and saw him there staring at cereal. He clearly wasn't buying. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I paid in cash, left quickly, took a different route home, didn't go straight to the cabin. I doubled back, checked for tails. Old habits from a paranoid uncle who used to be in the service. I never thought I'd need them. Eventually, I made it back, locked the doors, sat down, heart pounding just a little harder than I wanted to admit. That night, I checked all my security cams. Nothing out of the ordinary, but I changed my passwords again. I shut off the main Wi-Fi, moved money into a different account. Something was coming. I could feel it. And I was right because the next morning a knock came at the door, but this time it wasn't family. It was a man in a gray suit, and he was holding paperwork. I opened the door cautiously, not fully swinging it out. The man in the gray suit looked official in the way people do when they want to be taken seriously more than they want to be understood. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, holding a leather folder in one hand and a business card in the other. Mr. Aaron Caldwell, he asked, even though he was clearly sure I didn't answer right away. My instincts were coiled tight. I represent the law firm of Kessler and Tate. I'm here on behalf of your family. He extended the folder toward me. I didn't take it. My family hired a lawyer. They filed a claim, he said, with no sign of discomfort. They're alleging financial abandonment along with unlawful withdrawal of familial support. I actually laughed out loud. I couldn't help it. Is that even a thing? He gave a small lawyerly shrug. They believe they have grounds for civil damages, claiming you had a long-established pattern of financial care and that your abrupt absence caused measurable harm. Now, I did take the folder more out of disbelief than curiosity. I flipped through the documents. There was in black and white Nate's name, my parents' statements about decades of care, unspoken familial agreement, and dereliction of duty to dependent. They were suing me for not paying their bills. The lawyer gave me a moment. You're not obligated to respond now, he said. But the court date is listed. You'll want representation. I'm not obligated to do anything, I muttered, handing the folder back. Tell them I'll see them in court. He gave a professional nod, turned, and left. I stood there for a while, motionless, the morning wind curling around me like a warning. So this was their endgame, not a conversation, not an apology litigation. I knew then that this had to end. Not just legally, not just with a counter lawsuit. It had to end completely. They had shown me who they were, who they'd always been, and now they were giving me the gift of clarity. I'd spent most of my adult life believing that love meant sacrifice, that family meant endurance. But they had made it clear to them love meant control and family meant obedience. And I was done. I didn't waste time. I hired a lawyer of my own, a sharp, no-nonsense woman with a background in family law and a distaste for emotional blackmail. After she read through their case, she actually rolled her eyes and said, "You've got to be kidding me. This wouldn't hold up in a reality TV court, let alone a real one." Still, we prepared. We documented everything. Every wire transfer, every receipt, every text from Nate asking for money, every bank statement showing the mortgage payments that had come out of my account. We created a full timeline, 7 years of quiet, steady financial support, all backed up with evidence. Not because I needed to defend myself morally. I already knew I'd done more than my share, but because we needed to shut this down so thoroughly they'd never dare try it again. 2 months later, we stood in front of a judge. They actually showed up, all three of them. My father looked thinner than I remembered, but still held his head high, that same steel in his eyes. My mother looked tired, worn down. Nate, he looked smug, like he thought this was his golden ticket. I wondered if he was already mentally spending whatever payout he thought was coming. The courtroom was quiet as the judge leafed through the case file. Then Ree stood. She didn't hold back. "Your Honor," she said, "the plaintiff's claim hinges on an idea that familial obligation equals legal responsibility. That's simply because my client provided support willingly, without condition. He is now financially and legally bound to continue doing so. But there is no contract, no agreement, no power of attorney, no co-signed loans, just decades of generosity, repaid with entitlement." She submitted our documentation, over 100 pages. When it was my father's turn, he tried to frame it emotionally. "Your Honor, this isn't just about money. It's about betrayal. My son was a pillar in our family. He disappeared without warning, leaving us to pick up the pieces." Ree stood again. And where exactly was this sense of family when Mr. Caldwell was told on his birthday that he wouldn't be missed if he vanished? My father tried to speak again, but the judge raised a hand. "I've seen enough." He looked directly at my parents. "I'm dismissing the case with prejudice. Mr. Caldwell has no legal obligation to support you. Financial generosity does not equal legal duty. And frankly, this court is disturbed by the manipulation at the heart of this case." Then he turned to me. "Mr. Caldwell, I hope you understand that walking away was your right." I nodded once. "I do now." As the gavel came down, the sound echoed like a final door slamming shut. Outside the courtroom, they tried one last time. My mom rushed after me. "Aaron, wait, please. We didn't know it would come to this. We were just scared." I turned, looked at her. At the woman who once made me soup when I was sick, who kissed my forehead goodnight when I was 7, and who sat silently while I was told I wouldn't be missed. I believe you, I said. But being scared doesn't justify what you did. It never did. Nate opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. Don't, just don't. I walked away. That was over a year ago. Since then, I've rebuilt my life on my terms. I still live in the same cabin, still hiked those trails. I started teaching coding part-time online and finally finished that book I always said I'd write. It's not about revenge or family. It's about freedom and finding out who you are when no one else is telling you. I haven't heard from them since. Sometimes I think about that birthday dinner. The laughter, the smugness, the way they treated my existence as disposable. And then I think about now the silence, the peace. They were right in a way. I did disappear. And not one of them truly missed me. But I don't miss them either. And that more than anything tells me I made the right choice.